Hi, my name is Justin, and I was born by gender. This is my story, and it's hard to say if it's the tale of a girl or a boy. You'll understand what I mean by that soon enough. I was born with both male and female private parts. The doctors were incredibly surprised, as you can imagine. My parents were shocked. No one warned them during mom's pregnancy that anything was wrong. When mom was carrying me, the doctor told her she was expecting a boy. My dad was overjoyed. He had always wanted a son. He threw a big party to reveal my gender, and blue balloons filled the backyard. He began working on the nursery when my mom was just 6 months pregnant. The walls were painted blue. The toys and clothes they bought were meant for a boy. Everything was ready for my arrival, their beautiful, healthy little boy. Well, that wasn't what they received. Instead, my mom delivered me, someone between genders. I wanted to make sure you all know that my parents loved me dearly. They never abused me in any way or made me feel anything but loved. They supported me every step of the way, even when I was struggling with my identity. That being said, they did mess up when it came to my upbringing. Instead of letting me know there was something different about me, they kept this a secret from me. They figured they'd explain it when I was older. We now know that it would have been best to take me to a therapist from an early age and help me understand my unique condition early on. It wasn't an easy situation to deal with, and they really did try their best, so I don't blame them. The doctors and my parents didn't know what my main gender was, so for the time being, they didn't add any on my birth certificate. It was left blank. They decided, however, to raise me as a boy. After all, that was what they had been expecting, and everything was prepared to receive a boy. They even had picked up my name and everything. To keep my condition a secret from my family, they had to keep anyone but the both of them from changing my diapers when I was a baby. My family always teased them about how overprotective they were, but nowadays they understand why they did it. My grandparents got mad at my folks for a while for keeping such a secret from them. I still remember that argument. They accused my parents of not trusting them. My mom and dad agreed that they had been foolish, and for some time, things were tense between them and my grandparents. Luckily, they talked things out, and eventually, my grandmom and granddad forgave them. They still don't agree with the decisions my mom and dad took, but they love them enough to look past this mistake. Also, they want to be in their grandson's life. I know I'm really lucky to have such a loving, supporting family. As a kid, I didn't know anything was different about me. After all, I just knew my own body, and everything seemed normal. Luckily, when you are a child, most bodies look alike. I carried my hair short and wore boys' clothes, so no one suspected a thing. I played soccer and went to the boys' bathrooms at school. I had a blissfully normal childhood, but that would soon change. Puberty and middle school arrived, and both of these would completely change my life. Really, in a matter of months, everything I knew seemed to be put on its head. The first major fact that made me realize something was different about me was a biology class. The teacher gave us a lesson on the reproductive system. I kept expecting him to mention the two private parts that I had, but that moment never arrived. He only mentioned women's and men's parts, nothing in between. I was floored. Even though no one was looking at me, I felt like everyone was staring, like they knew. I didn't understand what was going on, how it could be that everyone else's body was different from my own. I pretended to feel sick after that class was over and was sent to the nurse's office. I didn't feel like I could deal with the rest of my school day. I felt like I was about to be sick and break down sobbing all at the same time. I must have looked really sick because the nurse got this worried look on her face and immediately called my mom. It didn't take her longer than half an hour to arrive, clearly rushing by something the nurse told her. Mom was about ready to take me to the hospital. I only told her not to when we got into the car. I explained that I wasn't sick. She seemed like she was ready to scold me, but then I blurted out the question I had been holding down all through the biology class. Why did I have different private parts than other people? Mom was clearly shocked by my question at first. A moment later, though, she sighed heavily. It looked like she had been waiting for this day to arrive. She told me she'd answer all my questions as soon as my dad arrived home from work. Dad was never home before dinner time, but that day, he returned extra early. It was clear Mom had told him the news because he had the same look on his face that my mother had. They both sat down with me around the kitchen table and they began answering my many questions. They told me they hadn't revealed my condition to me before since they were worried I wouldn't understand it. They wanted me to be old enough, concerned I would be traumatized by the news. I was so confused and furious with my parents. I deserved to know how my body worked. It was so unfair that they kept everything a secret from me for so long. I rushed upstairs and locked myself in my bedroom. My mom knocked on my door and she tried to convince me to get me to talk to her. I refused. I gave my parents the silent treatment for a long time. Honestly, I couldn't even imagine going back to school and facing all my friends knowing I was so different from them. So I began missing class, and my parents didn't make me go back before I was ready. After all, they understood how big a trauma this was for me. Eventually, I agreed to talk to them once again. I was still mad and acting defensively. They had even worse news for me. They explained that as I went through puberty, my body would begin to change. I would develop a chest just like my mom. I was terrified, but there was nothing I could do to stop this from happening. My life seemed to be spinning out of control, and I was barely even a teenager. Bit by bit, my body really did begin to change. I kept cutting my hair short, but my figure began getting more feminine. My voice became softer and higher pitched.
My friends began noticing something was different about me. My features became rounder, and I didn't have an Adam's apple. They began mocking me almost daily, and the more girly I looked, the worse it got. They made fun of me and called me Justine instead of Justin. It was a really traumatic period of my life. I became really depressed, and even getting out of bed in the morning was a struggle. My parents had me see a doctor who explained that my female hormones were most predominant in my body. That was why I looked more and more like a girl each passing day. They couldn't have known this when I was born, or else I would have been raised as a woman. My parents decided the best thing for me was a fresh start, so we moved away from my hometown and bought a house on the other side of the country. It was also closer to my grandparents, and I was happy to be spending more time with them. That was when the rest of my family discovered the fact that I was bigender. I was worried they'd think I was a freak, but they were really supportive. They were mad at my parents, of course, but I already told you about how that problem was solved. At first, I spent a lot of time indoors. I didn't go to school right away since I didn't feel ready to face the world. I began going to therapy and was homeschooled for almost half a year. It was a time of great changes in my life, and I got to understand much about myself and my true identity. In the end, I decided to go back to school. It was my senior year, and I was relieved to be around people my age once more. There, students didn't know me as Justin. They just saw a girl when they looked at me. I was also acting far more feminine and delicate. I began enjoying activities usually more associated with teenage girls. I dressed as a girl and was letting my hair grow. I was surprised to discover that guys at my new school actually found me attractive. They smiled at me and flirted openly, so it was clear they really did see me as a girl. It was so liberating, and I embraced my new identity completely. I actually changed my name to Julia, since I associated Justine with the bullying I received at my previous school. During this time, I became friends with several girls, and they taught me all about makeup. I loved it. I soon became quite proficient with it. In fact, I'm currently studying to become a makeup artist, and I think I'm really good at it. Until I graduated high school, I never dated any of the guys who flirted with me. I was too worried they'd discover the truth about my bigender condition and spread nasty rumors about me. So when I met a guy I really liked, I didn't know how to deal with it. Jack was kind, sweet, and funny. I had a massive crush on him, but kept pretending we were simply friends. That was until he asked me out. I didn't know if I should just reject him or if I should agree to go on a date with him. I talked to my parents and my therapist, and in the end, I decided to give him a chance. But I didn't feel right hiding my identity from him. I could only imagine how mad he'd be if we began dating and actually kissed, only for me to throw that bomb on him later on. So I told him I'd love to go on that date, but first I needed to tell him something important. I imagined he'd freak out and leave, but instead, we ended up talking all night long. Jack understood me as no one did before. We've been together ever since, and he loves me just the way I am. In fact, he proposed a few weeks ago, and you can bet I said yes. My parents are so happy for us, and we are getting married soon. Nowadays, I identify as a woman, and everyone in my life accepts me that way. To my friends, family, and fiancé, I'm Julia. I finally feel happy and comfortable with who I am. It took me a long time to get here, but I know my journey of self-discovery was worth it. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos in the channel.
Hi, my name is Jamilia, but that wasn't always the case. A few years ago, I was a completely different person. My name was Jamel, and I used to be a boy. Now I'm a woman, and I love myself. But back then, well, let's just say I was very confused and didn't quite know what I wanted to do with my life. Let me start at the very beginning. I was born the only brother in a big family. I had 4 older siblings, all of them girls. I didn't even get to really know my dad. He passed away when I was just 5 years old. I don't really remember much about him, so you can imagine I had lots of feminine influences in my life growing up. My sisters all had names that began with J. Yes, my parents were those kinds of people. Don't get me wrong, Mom was awesome, but I thought it was so cheesy. So we were Jasmine, Janice, Jennifer, June, and Jamel. Believe me, kids mocked us all the time in the neighborhood and at school. It was kind of silly, but Mom thought it was so cute. Like all of us had something in common. In case you are wondering, yes, my mom's name begins with a J, and so did Dad's. Judy and Jimmy. I groaned just thinking how cheesy this all sounds. Anyways, my life was a bit peculiar, if you want to know. Growing up with 4 older sisters was no walk in the park. Sure, they spoiled me rotten, but I was also basically their small doll. They put makeup on me and little dresses. They thought it was so funny, and whenever they had slumber parties, I was basically the cute little entertainment. I never had a father figure in my life or any kind of masculine influence. Everything was girly stuff. What we ate, the games we played, what my sisters talked about, it was all girl-related. I ended up being stuck doing whatever my 4 older sisters wanted me to. Since I was the youngest, I didn't really get a say. And if we ever had a vote to decide anything, you can guess that I was always outnumbered. So I just began adapting to what they liked to do in order to be able to have some fun at all. They would convince my mom to keep my hair longish so that they could comb it into pretty styles when we were at home. They would also test their makeup on me. When the older sister, Jasmine, went to beauty school, who do you think was her guinea pig? Me, of course. She would have me sit there for hours. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I kind of enjoyed it, actually. She was so delicate about it, and she'd talk to me and tell me all about her life. I felt she was so glamorous and cool. At school, I didn't really get along with guys my age, to be honest. They were all super into sports and things that I didn't think were too cool. I prefer hanging out with the girls instead, and I got along so well with them. I think that most, if not all of my friends were girls. I would also give them great fashion advice, and they would ask me what to wear before going on a date. Boys always wondered why I never hung out with them, or why I didn't play football during the recess. I preferred staying behind and playing with the girls or gossiping with them. No one really seemed to mind at first, but as I grew older, things seemed to change. Boys thought I was weird, and they'd mock me about being too feminine. They didn't understand why I always wanted to be surrounded by girls. Though my sisters had always applied makeup on me while we were inside our home, I began wanting to do it when I went outside. I started to paint my nails with my sister's polish and try different colors. It was so much fun, and I thought it looked so cute on me. I began wearing blush and eyeshadow when I went to school, and eventually, even lipstick. My sisters didn't see anything wrong with it. They had always been super supportive of me and my choices. They thought that if it was what I liked, then it was perfectly fine. The first time I did it, though, it wasn't so easy, I'll admit it. I was using a pretty pink nail polish and covered my hands with mittens. I thought everyone could notice, but I don't believe anyone really did. When I got home, one of my sisters saw me take off my gloves. I hid my hands in my pockets, thinking that she would call me weird. Instead, June hugged me tightly, and she told me I never had to hide who I really was. Later that night, she told the rest of our siblings about it. They were all so supportive, and it was then that I understood that I could be open about who I was around them. This confidence grew every passing day until I decided I was brave enough to wear makeup and nail polish outdoors. Showing off my feminine side in public felt right. It felt like I had been hiding for far too long, and now I could finally let the whole world know who I was. People stared my way, mostly guys. They asked themselves what was going on with me. Sure, I hung out with girls, that was one thing, but wearing makeup and painting my nails was so different from everything they had seen. We lived in a small town, and most guys were really manly. Everyone expected men to like football and beer, as well as get super bored when their girlfriends and wives went out shopping. But I loved shopping, and having my hair done sounded like a great plan for a lazy Sunday. So believe me when I say that a guy like me wasn't well received. I had to deal with a lot of bullying at school, and male students called me all kinds of nasty names. I won't repeat them here, but you can imagine what I'm speaking about. They told me that I was a girl and that I should begin acting like a man, that boys didn't wear makeup and we didn't paint our nails either. And if they ever discovered I was actually wearing girls' underwear underneath my pants, I'm sure they would have completely lost it. My sisters told me I didn't have to let those cruel boys get to me. If they wanted to talk, let them talk. No one could make me feel bad without my permission. It wasn't easy to ignore them, though. The jokes were so cruel and mean-spirited. They told me that because I hung out with girls so often, I was turning myself into one. They also began noticing that I never went on a date with any woman. All my female friends were just that, friends. I felt like a girl and wanted to become one. In order to be approved for the procedure, I needed to have several sessions with the shrink, and he needed to report that it was really in my best interest. My therapist explained that in order to be approved for the surgery, I had to spend a period of time actually living as a woman. That was when I began dressing as one 24/7. My sisters helped me buy pretty dresses and a wig. I felt so feminine. It was amazing. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally acting the way I was meant to. Plus, in the big city, people didn't seem to find me so strange. There, plenty of guys felt the way I did and dressed like women just like I did. It was such a relief to meet others that shared my questions and struggles. I wasn't romantically interested in any of them, so they began calling me other nasty names. To them, a guy who liked other men was disgusting. I didn't understand why they cared so much. It wasn't as if I was going to force them to go out with me or anything like that. Believe me, the moment I saved up enough money after high school was over, I moved to a bigger city, a place where guys like me weren't so unusual. 2 of my sisters moved with me, and we rented an apartment together. It was so cool, and we had so much fun together. While I was at college, I began seeing a therapist in order to go through a gender reassignment surgery. The surgery was really expensive, but I had the full support of all my family. Mom paid for more than half of it, and I managed to complete the rest of the cost with my savings and gifts from my sisters. You can't imagine how much I loved them all right then. I wouldn't have been able to go through with it without their support. Not only financial aid, mind you, they were there for me every step of the way, and they gave me the strength to make hard life choices. A year after the surgery, I was able to legally change my name to Jamelia. I know that my mom would have never forgiven me if I took a name that didn't begin with a J. She was more than happy for me to become a girl, but family tradition couldn't be messed with. All my closest friends were there for me as well. Though the recovery period after the surgery was very painful, everyone helped me through it. They got me my meds and even cooked for me when I felt too weak to get out of bed. I consider myself fully a woman nowadays. My hair is long and I have a very curvaceous body. I'm dating this amazing guy. My mom absolutely loves him. Not only because he is a sweetheart, but because, you guessed him, his name also starts with a J. He's called Jules. It sounds so strange, doesn't it? But he's the right guy for me. When he found out that I wasn't biologically born a girl, he didn't care at all. To him, I'm a woman now, and that's all that matters. I work as a makeup artist, just like Jasmine. She's taught me so much and helped me pay my way through beauty school. Lately, I've been considering if I should start a YouTube channel doing makeup tutorials, but I'm not too sure about it. I don't want to receive nasty comments in my feed, but at the same time, I feel like I can help a lot of people who have been in my same situation. So, what do you think? I'd love to know your opinion on the matter. Maybe I'll end up doing it if you think that I should. Please tell me what I should do in the comments. I'm looking forward to your feedback. I'd also love to read if you've ever had to struggle with who you are and what society expects from you. It's not always easy opening up about our true selves, but I think it's important to always be honest and kind to one another. Do you agree? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos in the channel.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I was born with no private parts. I wish I could say it was a figure of speech, but it's very real. When I was a young kid, I didn't realize anything was wrong. To me, it seemed completely normal. I thought every other child looked the way I did, and no one told me there was something different about me. It was until we had a biology class about the reproductive system. The teacher explained all about the different organs and the distribution inside and outside the body. Suddenly, I had so many questions, but I couldn't ask them in front of all my classmates. I rushed home that day and begged my mom for answers. I still remember how worried she looked. She went pale and sighed. She had been dreading this moment for a long time, and now she finally had to explain my condition. It was the most confusing day of my entire life. Suddenly, everything changed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and in fact, ended up calling my mom a liar. She told me I was born with no private parts, and that it was a rare condition. I could still go to the toilet normally, but I'd never be able to have children of my own. I completely freaked out, screamed at her, and rushed up to my room. I didn't want to speak to anyone after that, and even ended up missing a few days of school. My parents understood I was struggling, so they didn't force me to leave the house. They did speak to me often and tried their best to make me understand what was going on and how it would affect my life. Eventually, I went back to school and everything seemed to go back to normal. I didn't really understand how this would affect my life in the future. I was too young to comprehend it fully yet, so I remained my old happy self. That was until I got my first crush on a guy. I was a teenager, so we just kissed, but I began wondering what would happen if I ever wanted to do more. Suddenly it hit me that I was different from all those around me, and my life wouldn't be the same as theirs. I began retreating little by little and felt depressed most of the time. I became quiet and stopped hanging out with my friends, too scared they'd find out about the truth somehow. By the time I graduated high school, I barely had any friends at all and had become a total outcast. This wasn't because people didn't want to speak to me, but because I refused to talk to almost anyone. I became so paranoid and self-conscious, feeling like a complete freak. As I became an adult, another realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I would never be able to get pregnant. Sure, I understood it before, but I was too young to actually care about it. Now, when I imagined myself being a mom, I had to deal with the fact that it was impossible to carry a child myself. This only made things worse, and I stopped going out of my house at all. It was the darkest time of my life. I thought I had no future, and I completely lost myself in my depression. Thank heavens I had my family who supported me no matter what. Mom and Dad stood by my side every step of the way, and they were the ones who convinced me to see a shrink. I needed to come to terms with my condition, they explained. I was so terrified people would think I was a freak, but during my therapy, I came to realize that the truth was, I saw myself as a freak. And how could anyone love me if I didn't love myself first? It took me a long time to begin accepting the fact that I was different from other women my age, that I wasn't able to be with a man in a normal way, that I had to find other ways of showing my love when I dated someone. Sure, dating would be hard, and some guys just wouldn't accept my condition, but I discovered that not everyone was so prejudiced as I thought when I was younger. Eventually, I got better and managed to overcome my depression. I applied for college and began my studies again, feeling full of life and happy once more. But it was still hard. I only dated guys 1 or 2 times, unable to tell them the truth about the way I was born. That was until I met Ben. Ben was amazing from the start. He was so sweet and understanding to everyone around us, and that's what I liked so much about him. We went on several dates, but I was terrified to tell him the truth. After a month of seeing each other, though, I knew the time had come. Either I stopped hanging out with him, or I came clean. Would you believe that he told me he'd stick by me even with my condition? That he liked me just the way I was? I couldn't believe it. A few years later, we graduated and Ben asked me to marry him. I immediately said yes, knowing he was the right man for me. He doesn't care that I can't get pregnant. We want kids, though, and so we are in the process of adopting a beautiful child we'll raise together as a family. I still wish I could experience the joys of pregnancy, but I've come to terms with the fact that it's not in the stars for me. Ben's support has also helped me greatly. Today, we got a call about a baby girl who's been put up for adoption. I have such a good feeling about this. Wish us luck. Thanks for watching. Have you ever dealt with something that made you feel like you couldn't fit in? And don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel.